More than 430 million rand. That's how much was spent here in Gauteng to decontaminate, disinfect and deep clean schools. A report into the spending has been compiled by the Provincial Education Department's HOD. The Gauteng Education MEC Panyaza Lesufi is joining us now, and by all accounts, he's not happy with those numbers. MEC, good afternoon to you. How did this happen, do you think?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. I think it happened purely because we're really under pressure to monitor some of the transaction and also to check whether things were done correctly. But I must indicate that when the journalist that was writing the story contacted me and requested information and also alerted me that authorities were not cooperating, I immediately asked the HOD to compile a report. On the basis of receiving that report, I handed it over to the journalist. I think it was on the basis that the journalist wrote the story. And when I went through the report, I was also taken aback. I've since finished a couple of meetings with our legal unit. We're working around the clock because there's already a proclamation on PPEs with the SIU so that I can request the law enforcement agencies to go through this account so that we can understand it better. But I must register my dissatisfaction on face value. When I went through the report, I really feel that some people must account, and therefore we need to have a proper investigation.
Fair enough. So you've raised a couple of points. Let me ask you this first of all. Do you believe this was a tender issue or, as you've suggested, poor monitoring due to the pressure that the system finds itself under?
It is a combination of many facts. In the report, it's indicated that in some instances, teachers were refusing to go to classrooms until the classrooms were disinfected. In some areas, learners were also refusing to go to class, and there were pressures across the sector when somebody is tested positive. People were refusing to come back to work because somebody tested positive, and therefore they felt not only the area where the person was working around should be disinfected, people felt that the entire school premises should be disinfected. So it's a combination of many things, and that is why we believe that a credible, independent, outside the department investigation will assist us to check whether there was value for money, there was a need for the services, whether the service providers charged the correct figures. If not, we just have to ensure that those that were responsible for this procurement must account for their actions.
Fair enough. Assuming that there was wrongdoing, it also raises questions, MEC, about oversight, about gatekeeping in your department. You can cite issues of pressure, but nonetheless, this is firmly on your desk. It is your responsibility, isn't it?
And that is why I'm acting, because I mean, there's a clear separation of powers in government, Jeremy. I don't want to avoid taking responsibility. I will take responsibility if indeed there were wrongdoings. But the reality is that we are compelled by law that as political office we must stay far from these matters of procurement. The unfortunate part is that we stay far from these matters of procurement, but if something goes wrong, we are the first one to be accused of neglecting our responsibility. So it's a balance that needs to be reached at one stage or another. So where I am, those that procured these services, they must explain. And I've already received a report, as I've indicated, from the HOD and the CFO. I'm consulting the law enforcement agencies to investigate. I'm also checking the possibility of also requesting the Auditor General to also investigate this matter. And where people that were responsible are fingered, I will not hesitate to act, and I will act decisively, even if
MEC, whose responsibility is it to procure the services?
It's accounting officer, the accounting officer of the department.
And you've had that conversation already, have you?
Yes, and he gave me a report. It's on the basis of that report that we gave it to the journalist, and also it's on the basis of that report that I'm soliciting independent forensic investigators to go through that report and advise me a course of action to take.
You said to me that certain people are not cooperating. Who are they?
Well, when the journalist contacted me, indicated that our media team, which normally receive inquiries from journalists, that they were not meeting the deadline, they were not responding. When I checked with the media team, they indicated that the team that is dealing with procurement was the one that was delaying. When I checked with them, they would say they were compiling the report because it's quite a massive report. So I gave them a tight deadline. Fortunately, they met that deadline and they gave me that report, and I handed over that report to the journalist.
We quoting this figure of 430 million rand to disinfect Gauteng schools. It's a lot of money. It's close on R500 million. Do you have any sense of how much it should have cost?
I don't have that idea. I'm also in the dark. I don't even know whether it's worth it or not. I don't know whether it was done procedurally or not. I don't even know whether the service providers overcharged us or not. So it's only when we've concluded the investigation that I've commissioned that we'll have an idea. And I can assure you, Jeremy, we'll share that information with members of our society.